Hello, welcome to another bonus episode of Hockey Inside Out. What do you make of Arber Xhekaj's return to the Habs lineup? It was a little bit of a shaky one. He took 3 penalties in his first 2 games, and then the Habs made him a healthy scratch. Why do you think he had such a bumpy return to the NHL? Rick?
Well, I mean, I've always liked Xhekaj, and unfortunately, his return and the things that he was doing was not the type of things that he should be doing. Yeah, you talked about, some of the penalties maybe were not really that noticeable at the AHL level versus the NHL. But anyways, there are penalties. He has to understand that his game is about playing well defensively, making a physical presence, all within the rules, and believing that the reason why he was in the NHL was being able to play and not make too many mistakes and make good passes, everything that you like to see a young defenseman do. He got away from that, and the result is showed a little bit of frustration, didn't have the same confidence, and ultimately hasn't performed the way he had before he was sent down to Laval. He'll get that back, just a little bit of time, and sending him the message that those type of things that he was doing on the penalty front is not acceptable, and he'll learn from it.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Arber Xhekaj. I think he's, the first game in Laval, he wasn't very good either, and there was a bunch of people wringing their hands, worried about him, and then he was one of the most dominant players in the AHL for the rest of the stretch down there. He's clearly an NHL player. I think he's a very good player, better than I gave him credit for last year. He's also a very, very rare specimen in terms of the tools that he brings to the game. I know Chris likes to be humble, but it's kind of like Chris Nyland, where it's not just a tough guy out there to knock people's heads off. It's a guy who takes a regular shift, who can play the game and really pushes play the right way most of the time. So I look at Xhekaj's development from a bit further back, and I say, this is a player who's done a lot in a short amount of time, who was, not valued enough throughout his whole career, not drafted into the Ontario Hockey League either. And he's just pushed through and made space for himself. And those kinds of players, I always refuse to doubt. I think that he's got a lot of personal investment in himself, and he's going to become a very good player. Whether that's on the third pairing or the second pairing, I think he can gust up there. I don't know. But even if he ends up being just a third pairing defenseman who has the physical tools that he has out there on the second power play unit once in a while, maybe, I think he's going to be a very good player.
Yeah, I love Arber Xhekaj. Certainly, I don't know if there's something going on there between himself and the coach. Coach said he sent him to Laval to learn how to be a pro. I know the coach likes that saying, there's guys that play hockey and there's hockey players. Well, he's a hockey player. And he got called back up here, and he went down there, did the right thing, worked his butt off, dominated near the end. You got to be careful with guys like this, I think. And listen, I understand you can't let him do what he wants, and just he's the stud in the team and the new sheriff in town and all that. You got to be somewhat humble. But here's a guy that this team will need at some point in a big way. And I just hope, and I'm sure they understand they have what they have, but to handle them right, because you can mess with a guy like that and hurt him, I think. And here's a guy who I know when he's in the lineup, all his teammates play a lot bigger than they would if he wasn't. And certainly you got to be careful with the penalties. Believe me, I know I've taken those penalties. I've taken penalties that hurt team. And Greeny knows that. And I pissed at myself afterwards. but there comes a point where you really got to be careful with that. And then you also, as a team, better get your goddamn penalty killing unit going, because you're going to need that guy, and sometimes he is going to screw up, and he's going to do it at times, and it's either going to cost your team or your team's going to, strap on the boots and say, let's kill it for this guy, because he's the guy who's always out there defending us. So I've seen it happen with me. There's times I sat in that penalty box in close games, and man, guys went out and killed that penalty off. He's got to be careful. Can't run around like a nut all the time. It is a different league. But again, I'm not worried about him. I just hope they handle him well moving forward and not hurt his confidence in any way. And he just grows as a pro. It takes time. We've seen it with Slafkovsky. It takes time. It takes time with almost all players. So, except for those really upper echelon guys. And I love Arber, and I just hope he does well here and stays here.
All right, well, let us know in the comments section below, what did you think of Arber Xhekaj's return to the Habs lineup, and make sure you go to hockeyinsideout.com to see our full episode.